Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are listening and watching this interview. My name is Mick Hughes, founder of the ACL Hub, and I've got the absolute joy and pleasure of talking shop with one of the finest in the business, Amy Arundale. Have you changed your surname now that you've? Are we
No,
no
I'm
going to
actually, yep,
keeping the
keeping the
same?
last name. Yep, yep.
Amy, welcome to the ACL Hub, and thanks for spending some time. Amy, for those that got, for context, Amy just recently got married, so congratulations once again, Amy.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. It's I've been a huge follower of your work. I've read a lot of your seminal papers, and obviously we've chatted before in the past, and I couldn't think of anyone better to ask to get inside the mind of to see how we can improve ACL outcomes. For those that don't know Amy, Amy's got she's got some fantastic. I won't butcher your bio. I'll let you talk a little bit about yourself, but she's a clinical researcher. She's worked across the globe with basketball athletes, Red Bull athletes, soccer athletes. Unfortunately for herself, she's also experienced the pain of an ACL injury too. So I think her perspective on things today would be wonderful. So Amy, I might let you just have a little bit of talk about yourself to start off, just for people that don't know your background and what you currently do and some of the work you've done.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that was a pretty good summary.
Short,
I'm
sharp, and sweet.
currently, yeah, yeah, currently director of movement science and innovation at the Washington Wizards. So, yeah, currently working the NBA. But like you said, yeah, have background both as a physio and a PhD in biomechanics. And where most people who go and do PhDs around ACLs have an ACL, and that's their reason for going and studying it. I did it the other way around.
Yeah.
I made it my goal to not tear my ACL, and then unfortunately, playing Aussie rules, coming back from COVID, tore my ACL. So did the PhD, did all the prevention that I thought I could, and um, for a host of reasons,
Mm.
that who knows what was the straw that broke the camel's back, but
Yeah.
or
Yep.
in my case broke my ACL, but yeah, it kind of goes to show that to some extent we may not be able to prevent all of them.
Mm. Yeah,
But
absolutely. It's and if you don't mind, we might, if you're happy to talk about your injury, I think that'd be really some interesting, because it is like it's a fascinating I guess example of, a lot of your early work was done in prevention space, and we know ACL injury is so multifactorial. There's lots of different things. The added element of COVID and a lot of the inconsistency of training as well. Like, yeah, what's your kind of gut feel about, like, I know you said there's probably a lot of different factors, but if you had any kind of sense of what went on at the time,
yeah,
can you take us through your injury and what was sort of going on at the time?
yeah, absolutely. So little background is I grew up playing soccer. I
Mm,
played soccer in college and in Scotland for a little bit. Got pretty fed up of playing soccer though in the US. Because as a to get at a like decent level play, as a woman, once you're in your 20s and 30s, you're really having to play co-ed.
yeah,
And I was playing co-ed soccer on just terrible pitches. I mean, like we're
yeah,
talking like they're laying down sand in the middle, but then, they can't mow the thing, so the grass is probably 7 inches long in the corners.
oh,
Um, and I was taking some pretty big hits because I'm staying in shape, but playing against, guys who are 2 times my size, and the only
mhm,
exercise they get is their weekly football match. And so,
yeah,
like, literally cannot break. Like, they
yeah,
break by hitting whatever's in front of them.
yeah,
Uh, so I was getting pretty fed up with that, and actually at the time got introduced to Aussie rules football and realized
mm,
that actually I was probably safer playing Aussie rules than I was playing co-ed soccer,
yeah,
because at least
wow,
Aussie rules, right, there's a degree of control that happens in tackling, and there's also the consciousness of like, I'm going into this tackle, which means I have to be smart about it, because it's as likely to hurt me as it is to
Mm,
hurt whoever I'm
mm,
tackling. And so I actually pretty quickly realized that and loved it. So started playing Aussie rules.
yep,
So that was 2016.
yep,
In 2020, my partner and I moved to Austria, mid-pandemic.
yep. There you go.
Um, so I had been working for the Brooklyn Nets. Everything in New York kind of shut down. It
Yep.
was a pretty tough time to live in New York City, and so we made the decision to move to Austria. I took a job with Red Bull. But in that time, from a footy perspective, obviously no one was playing, no one was training. So was trying to train as much as I could on my own with limited facilities. And as things started to open back up in 2021, um, was living in Salzburg, Austria, which is a pretty small town. Salzburg does not have its own Aussie rules team, but Munich does, which is about 2 hours away.
It's
Um,
fascinating hearing Aussie rules has just found its tentacles in different regions of the world.
it's
It's cool.
wherever you have an Australian diaspora,
Yeah.
you
Oh,
generally
for
have one.
sure.
But yeah, so a little bit of context was right, like I hadn't played a game in a year, probably about a year and a half. I was training once a week, leading up. So for about the probably about the 8 weeks leading up to the game that it happened in, I'd been training once a week, but that's driving to Munich at
Hmm.
4 o'clock, getting there for 6 o'clock training, driving back at about 8, getting home at probably around 10:30, going to bed, getting
Wow.
up to work the next day. So really from a training volume was super, super low from a team
Yep.
training. So while
Yep.
cardiovascularly I was fit, strength-wise I was fit, just from the mental perspective of being in that like training environment or even game environment
Mm,
for sure,
mm.
just hadn't had that exposure.
Yeah. Gosh.
I'd played one training game, and actually in that training game sprained my left ankle as well. So in the
Yep.
game where I tore my ACL, I'd taped my left ankle. I have really hypermobile ankles, and so I'd clearly taken away degrees of freedom that I usually
Yeah.
have from my ankle. And so that may have contributed as well. And then I can tell you exactly what I was thinking. I was entirely in my head.
Oh
Um,
my lord.
and like we were probably only it was only about 5 minutes into the game. I had really high expectations of myself, particularly since the level of footy in Europe
Mm.
isn't at what I was used to
Yep.
playing.
Yep.
And yeah, I was pretty disappointed with the way I was playing. After a ball up. I got kind of behind play, so I was kind of downfield,
Yep.
um, and playing as a like ruck rover.
Yep.
Um, planted my foot. I was wearing cleats on a turf field. I can
Yep.
distinctly remember the feeling of my foot dropping down into the turf.
Yeah.
So my left leg, so my foot felt my foot drop into the turf. I turned to my right. And
Mhm.
mine wasn't very painful. It wasn't painful at all, actually, but I knew
Yeah.
immediately what I'd done. And
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Wow. Oh my lord. It's you can see it's like, probably reliving it's probably quite emotional too. Like it's hard to sort of like hear like all those little things sort of going through. And like did you feel that classic pop
I
and
did.
dissociation that everyone kind of feels and describes?
Uh, well, so this is where knowing you can know too much.
Mm-hmm.
Is yeah, I knew I had a little bit of rotational instability in my knee before. So I
Mm.
previously had a partial meniscectomy, both medial and lateral, and had a
Yep.
little bit of just rotational instability. So I knew what it felt for it to shift
Yeah.
slightly. I knew I shifted too far. I felt the
Yeah.
pop. Um,
Yeah.
I didn't have any pain.
Yeah. Yep.
So I walked myself off the pitch and
Yep.
then ran up and down and considered going back in, even though I knew, like, deep down it was one of those things. I knew exactly what I'd
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
And then had to just, like, there was no one else who was gonna tell me to sit down. I,
Yeah.
like, knew
Yeah.
I knew what I'd done, and I knew I had to
Yep.
sit my ass down. But
Yeah.
that was,
Yeah.
it was like, well, it feels just fine. I'll probably keep going. Like,
Yeah, for the first probably 20 minutes, half an hour. But it's like you hear these rare cases where there isn't that knee clutching moment or that significant pain episode, and someone kind of brushes the injury off as a sprain, or I jarred my knee. There's been a couple of cases I can recall from our professional leagues here in Australia where the injury has happened. The players continued to play until halftime. One case in point, I remember the player scored a try, like in rugby league. Like it was kind of starting to limp at the end of that first half, and he didn't come on the
yep,
second half because he'd obviously done too much damage. But it isn't always that let's get the stretcher out, let's get 3 people out to help this person off the field. Sometimes it can be quite subtle and painless in your example, where you feel like you could probably play on, which is, it's fascinating to
yeah,
hear that spectrum of injury.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that's a really important thing for people to be aware of too, because a
Mm,
lot of people really expect that really kind of almost, I don't want to
mm,
call it violent response, but they're really jarring, painful response. And I think, like you mentioned, we see cases of it. It probably happens at lower levels more than we
mm,
expect of people. The injury probably happens significantly earlier,
mm.
but players
Yes.
continue playing or get back on, continue playing, and it's actually a secondary event that might actually, unfortunately, be worse than that primary.
Yeah.
And for me, like, I was relatively lucky in that I did have about a half centimeter tear in my medial meniscus,
Yeah.
but not more than that. Beyond the, like, where we'll leave my patellar cartilage out of that conversation.
Yeah. I was
But,
close
like,
my ears, block my eyes.
I've definitely had athletes, younger athletes, who can tell they've said that the same kind of similar to me is, like, they had the pop, they put themselves back in, they had a
Mm,
giving way, and it's actually
mm.
probably the giving way that was what
Yeah.
pulled them out of the game and what was actually painful. And that's when, the meniscus tear maybe happened, or kind
Yeah.
of posterior lateral corner. So
Yeah.
it's an awareness piece, and for people covering sidelines for sure.
Yes. Yeah, agree. I think there's that element that yeah, this is a really important teaching point for those health professionals, and even the patients too, who are kind of not sure what they've done, because it's not always that really obvious injury. I remember just recently I had a young I covered just by chance. I was walking our physio group look after our a netball competition, and there was a lineup. I was there to watch my daughter play, funnily enough, and I was just walking past the physio tables, and our new grad physio had a lineup of 20 people waiting to be strapped and assessed. And I was like, I can't walk past and not help out. So in like a half-hour window, I saw these suspicious, ACL injuries. And one particular player, she said, "Yeah, I've already played 2 games this morning," and she had like an obvious effusion on the knee. She goes, "Yeah, it just sort of twisted. I felt a pop, but I've been able to play on." I'm like, your knee's really unstable. It's starting to swell. I think you've injured your knee quite badly here. We need to stop. Like we can go from having, like a relatively simple injury. An ACL injury by itself is probably not the, like it's a serious injury. We've got to respect it, but it's
Yeah,
not the end of the world. But you go on to
yeah,
have a cartilage injury, you have a osteochondral injury where you break off cartilage or really dint the cartilage. You
yeah,
tear the meniscus quite badly, turn it into a bucket handle tear, and then we have to repair it. Like those two things there are
yeah,
far more important than the ACL injury itself. So
yeah.
I think
Sure.
that's what we just need to respect. What was your? I know, like I was followed your story, and you went through and had a reconstruction. Was there ever a consideration just about rehabilitation and just getting on with things alone with rehabilitation, or were you kind of thinking, yeah, this
Well,
one needs to be done?
yeah, so here's the secret, and not so secret, is actually I retore. Um And I'm currently non-operatively managing
Oh
my
my
knee.
Lord.
Um,
Can't wait to hear the rest of this story.
yeah. So there's the secret that I don't actually, I
You've
don't
been
know that
keeping.
I've been keeping. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
no,
Um,
it's a private matter. You don't need to be showing the world that you've hurt
well, I
yourself
kind of
again.
feel like to some extent, I feel like and I don't owe it to people, but I
Mm,
actually, and this goes to, I think, a question that you've written and to your initial question,
mm,
was like, for me going through the process of rehabbing my ACL, sharing it along the way, I thought was both helpful for me in kind of almost like journaling it in a way from a
mm,
social media standpoint, documenting it, but also then, yeah, sharing it with, like, the realities of an
mm.
ACL rehab. When I initially tore it the first time, I was pretty unstable. And
Yeah,
so I'd always actually thought that I would probably, if I tore it, I would go non-operative. But it was pretty clear quickly that I was not stable. And
yeah,
probably because of that rotational instability that I'd
yep,
had, kind of long term. But yeah, I had a couple giving way episodes just walking downstairs. I had to take a Red Bull soccer player out to a session and just planting with my left, to kick a ball, had a giving way. And so that for me was kind of right
mm,
away. I knew I had the
yep,
strength in it, but I just didn't have the stability. And so,
yep,
um, I knew that was actually then a pretty easy decision. And graft type was also pretty easy for me, for kind of a number of reasons, from sport to injury history.
yep.
Those kind of came in quick succession. Um, it's been a two-part episode in re-tearing it. I partially retore playing Aussie rules again, likely because I did not hold myself to a return to play standard that I hold my patients to. Um, so partially retore, kind of took a little step back from Aussie rules, and then in a staff soccer game, uh, did the
Uh,
rest of it in. So for
oh my
anyone
Lord.
working in a team environment, staff soccer games, staff footy
Yep.
games, staff any games are the highest risk
Oh,
of,
absolutely.
anything out there. Just don't do it, if you have any risk. But yeah, uh, for a number of reasons, primarily time.
Yep.
I've managed it non-op, and it's doing really, really well.
Yeah.
I think
Where are you at now? Where are you at now in your
actually,
rehab?
so I fully tore it in November of 23. So
23. Yep.
almost 2 years non-op now.
Wow. And coping pretty well?
Cool. Well, not playing,
Yeah.
not playing any change of direction sports.
Yeah.
But running just fine. Cross training, biking, lifting quite a bit with no issues, and
Yeah.
work. So that's been the time off to have surgery has probably been the biggest predictor of
Yeah.
my my lack of surgery, in this case. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And at the moment, just indefinitely rehabbing, or have you got plans for surgery at a later date?
we'll see.
Yeah.
I have a cartilage defect that we're just kind of monitoring.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
a lot will depend just on that cartilage defect. If I can keep it
Yeah.
stable, then I'll stay non-op. If it starts to get a little bit bigger, then probably
Yeah.
I'll go in there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, man, what a story. It is though. It's the always the social games that I think that's even like for those probably not. I think it's probably more so the people who have gone through 6, 9, 12 months of reconstruction rehab that start, telling me stories about, oh, like I don't want to go competitive. I don't want to go back to my pre-injury levels of play. I'm happy just to play social basketball, netball. And it's like as if that gives them permission just to, just it's like they get out of jail free card, that it's not competitive and I won't hurt myself again. It's like, no, you actually probably more risk of hurting yourself. The lower levels of play, there's actually higher injury rates.
Yeah.
People are less conditioned, less coordinated. They're more likely to
Yeah.
bump into you. You're going to be less conditioned because you're not taking things seriously. It's like the amount of re-injuries we see at the lower levels of play. It's crazy, and it's the staff events, you get called up on the Monday night saying, "Oh, hey, can you fill in for such and such? They can't make it to touch tomorrow night, or yeah, they can't make it to
Yep.
netball tomorrow night." It's like, yeah, sure,
Yeah.
I'll do it off the back of no training. That's when injuries occur. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's a crazy world out there. What you were saying before is pretty fascinating about how for females in the US, has that changed? Like the opportunities have changed for females now, like to play soccer. Is it still co-ed at that adult level of play, or is it changed a little bit so there's more now? Because there's been a huge shift across, the sporting opportunities here in Australia have certainly changed a lot. They're still far behind men, and there's still a long way to go. But have things changed in the last 5 to 10 years? Are you aware of in
Not
that space?
really. Not really. It's actually, so it's one of the things I actually really like about kind of the way Australian sporting culture's kind of built
Mm,
up, especially,
mm,
we'll say, especially kind of in rural communities around football and netball clubs.
yep.
Yes, they're a little bit sport specific, but
Yep.
right, you've got a community and you've got various levels of play kind of throughout. Unfortunately, the way the US system's set up is we've got really structured youth play that feeds into our college system, and then there's really nothing structured
Mm,
beyond that. It's
yep.
really all kind of recreational, unless you're playing at a professional level. There's
Mm,
some semi-professional, but very little, and
yep.
certainly not across the country. So beyond that, then it's just like adult recreational leagues.
Yep.
Some of those have some higher levels, but a lot of times finding like building full women's teams can be really tough
Yeah.
um to stay competitive, and so they often just end up with, you've got a really low level women's league. Maybe you've got one or two teams that just win everything. You've got co-ed, and then you've got men's divisions.
Yeah.
So I hope that that continues to change and we start to
Yep.
see a little bit more structure and certainly higher level kind of women's play. But yeah, unfortunately, there isn't much incentive to change that, and since
Yep.
there's not as much money in adult sports as there is in youth
Yeah.
sports,
Yep.
uh it hasn't like been a big driver to really change. So
Yeah, yeah, it's a shame because it's certainly. I mean, it'd be interesting to hear what other countries are like. I know in Australia, yeah, netball has got like a really good grasp, and I watched my daughter play netball, and from under 8 level, like 8 years of age, they've got the netball knee program fairly well instilled, even at a school level and at a community level. I think that's almost like synonymous with netball, that you do your 10-minute warm up before you play, you train and play. Obviously FIFA 11 plus, and now Perform Plus here in Australia with Matt Wallen and Football Australia,
yeah,
Celavith doing great work there, and the rest of the medical team there. They've done a great job of sort of bringing that also too. And I know different regions around the world will have different standards, but yeah, it's probably something I think we're really proud of here in Australia. But it's still, there's still a long way to go. There's still a lot of sporting clubs here in Australia that just are still unaware, because mums and dads coach those sports, and mums and dads
yeah,
of my age group now, 40s and 50s, with young kids that are playing social sports, they're kind of just reflecting on what they did for warm-ups back in the day, and they're just sort of taking that and running with it. So there's still that knowledge gap there, and that knowledge translation between that. um, in terms of, I guess a bit of a segue into injury prevention, like a lot of your research was done in that space in soccer. Like what are you finding? And I know, we know they're very effective. If we look at ACL injuries, we've got 50% reduction at least across the board. But barriers seem to be the biggest kind of, I guess there's a huge barriers to get them done. What do you
yeah.
find, I guess, in your experience working with soccer, and maybe even now at more at the elite level play in basketball? What are you finding some barriers there to get players, coaches, and athletes to engage in injury prevention programs? And do you find any effective ways to overcome those barriers?
Yeah, I mean, I think you actually mentioned one of the big ones at the youth level already, which is
Yep.
just awareness. Or
Yep.
we know from some of the research out there that like just the knowledge is a big barrier when it comes to on the coaching side, and
Yep.
cost gets linked into that. Ironic, since Perform Plus, FIFA 11 Plus, most of the prevention programs are free.
Yep.
So that really then feeds back into just that knowledge and awareness. No one's made a viral TikTok video of a prevention program yet. I'm waiting for
There
that
we go.
one.
There's an opportunity there. Huge
And
opportunity there.
there's a huge opportunity there. And credit to UEFA, credit to FIFA. They've put a lot of money into trying to raise awareness. UEFA, especially around the Women's Euros this summer, really put a lot of money into ACL injury prevention and trying to raise awareness in Europe in particular. But it's mom and dad coaching, U8,
Yep.
unless it pops up on their Facebook feed, on their Instagram feed, they aren't going to coaching education
Mm.
necessarily. So getting it into coaching education is huge. Making it standard part of like coaching licenses and coaching clinics.
Yep.
That's huge. Getting it part of coaching culture is massive.
Yep.
Because that's where some of that awareness comes from. I think honestly, a big part of it is helping coaches understand how it can fit and not
Yep.
away from their, practice plan. That it's time that's not wasted per se.
Yep.
And the other part of it then for coaches and for players is to make it fun and productive. Um, So it's that integration of, the way we originally wrote 11 plus. I say we, I wasn't actually part of that, but um,
Just run with it.
I'm gonna
Just say
I'm
no.
gonna
No
loop
one
myself.
knows.
It's like kind of what we as the research community said, you
Yep.
should do this, this, and this. And it's kind of the classic disconnect between like researchers and
Mm.
clinicians, people in the field, is like, okay, yeah, we can do this, and this in this order, and it takes this amount of time.
Yep.
But actually, if we were to do this, and then we're going to go do a passing drill, and then we're going to do this exercise, and then we're going to come back and integrate into volleys, or we're going to put these headers as part of a station within a drill. We're going to
Mm.
integrate it together. Suddenly now that coach is going, oh, well, now I've got this my technical portion of my warm up already. They're getting that technical warm up, which is how I structure my practice.
Yep.
We're already now integrating this piece in instead of running up and down in two lines. Now it already looks like the sport that I'm coaching. I'm more willing to integrate it in now. And as a player, instead of talking about what I ate for lunch or who's
Yep.
dating who or who just broke up with that so and so, as we then jog back to the beginning of our lines, and we're not really paying attention to what we're doing anyway.
Yep.
Now we're clicked in. We're thinking that sport. We're thinking what we have to do next. We're now
Yep.
engaged, and that we now know from a prevention side, from the like neurological side and neuropsych side, that that's probably as important
Yes.
as
Yes.
physical things that we're doing.
Yep.
So making it fun, making it engaging is going to help that motor learning part. It's going to also help us engage in it, have fun with it. And then all around, I think that's the buy-in piece.
Yep.
We've really kind of missed. And I think people are starting to latch on to that. James O'Brien and I, back at Red Bull, started a paper, and then we never really got the videos together. So maybe someday that will come out.
Yeah.
But I think
Awesome.
you're really starting to see that kind of integration of people thinking of like, okay, we don't, and Matt and Stella did this as well, breaking the Perform Plus
Mm.
into two pieces of like kind of the more active warm up, and then we're going to do the strengthening at the end.
Yep.
But getting creative and not necessarily formulaically following it, but we're getting it all in, I
Yep.
think is one of the big things that we need to start talking about in terms of
Mm. That's
overcoming.
awesome. Yeah, I'm just like thinking, like you look at the standard FIFA 11 warm up drill at the moment. So we got sort of, warm, there's like running drills. There's, your classic open the gate, shut the gate sort of hip drills. There's a whole lot of things that are in there as well. And thinking, well, if you want to bring a soccer ball into it, you can. Like you don't have to just do open the gate into air. You can do open the gate with a volley. Get a ball
Yeah.
and you open your hip up. Guess what? You just got to open the gate. Oh, here we go. Now we've just
Yep.
got to cross it across your body. They've got a ball there. Now you're kicking it over there. So you're getting those movements, but with a ball in your feet. And like
Mhm.
pogos, like you can just do pogos down the field, but you're doing headers along the way. So that
Yep.
syncs perfectly to what you're talking about. It's like getting players to switch on, not just sort of roll through the boring warm up, which often gets sort of, it gets half-assed done. That most
Yeah.
players know what to do, they know how to do it, and they're kind of getting to a point where you're a reasonable level now. You need to do it. It helps your performance. Like it's got these kind of performance benefits, but that mental side of the equation and getting switched on, ready for the next hour ahead. I think that's really key because we know, right, like the ACL injuries are more likely to happen in the first, 10 to 20 minutes of a game.
Mhm.
Training's a different scenario. We're not going as intense in training as what we are in games, but there's always that chance
Yep.
that things can go wrong in the early stages if we're not effectively warmed
Yep.
up. So both mentally
Yep.
and physically. Yeah, no, that's really good insight. It's a different perspective on things, which hopefully people can think a bit more broadly about because very important part of the process. Um, Moving on to, I reckon, rehab side of things. I think because you've had sort of such a diverse group of athletes, you've got basketball at the moment, you've had soccer in the past, you've had Red Bull, all the different things. Do you find that with an ACL rehab lens, do you find there's like much difference between the rehab of one athlete versus another? Obviously, maybe the last 20%, that being sports specific. But is there a big chunk of it that it doesn't matter what athlete is in front of you and what sport they're doing, or do you have to really from day one? Do you find that you have to really nuance the rehab to tailor this basketball athlete versus soccer athlete, or do you think, regardless of the sport, is it much of the muchness until the last sort of 20%? Then it really dials into being different amongst the sports. What's your kind of thinking there or your
Yeah.
perspective on things?
I think it's a great question. Fundamentally,
Mm.
uh, the big rocks are still the big rocks, and regardless of the sport. Like
Mm.
strength, they've got to be strong,
Yep.
right? We know you've got to have the quad strength. We know you've likely got to have. You're going back to a running cutting sport. You've got to have the hamstring strength. You've got to have the hip strength. You have to probably have the calf strength, even though we don't have the data to say that quite yet.
Yep.
Big rock, it's got to be there. We know you've got to be ready for the demands you're going to face. So if those are cardiovascular, we know you've got to be ready for those. Um, there's tailoring though that I think has to happen day one. Um, but whether or not that's sport specific or just athlete specific,
Mm.
um, can I think vary significantly. I think, I've had some athletes where, um, we're adjusting what they're doing to them from day one, but for them from a mental perspective, they actually don't want to engage in their sport
Yep.
necessarily until later on, until it's a little closer.
Yep.
So, whether if that's a soccer player, for example, we're doing things with their feet, we're getting them to move quickly early on. But that might not be with a soccer ball. There's
Yep.
others who that's the motivation, that's what feeds them. And so immediately having, a ball at their feet or a ball at their hand or, you know, kite ropes
Yep.
in their hand.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
That's what makes them tick, and
Yep.
so that's gotta be part of it from day one.
Yep.
So I really do tailor to sport very early,
Mm.
certainly tailored to athlete demands very early, um, but what that looks like is gonna be very, very different. So
Yep.
I think it's multi-leveled, is the rocks are
Mm.
always the same, the
Yep.
foundation is always the same. What the rest of it looks like is gonna change athlete to athlete and ACL to ACL, right? Like,
Yes. Yep.
No two
It's the
same, no two responses are the same. And so then as a result, it doesn't matter what sport it is.
yeah.
We're adjusting to how that knee is responding to whatever we threw at it the day before.
Yeah,
So
exactly right. And that's the beauty of ACLs. Like I often get asked, don't you get sick of treating ACLs or talking about ACLs? It's like, well, no, because there's every ACL is different, every person's different. The
yeah,
brain and the psyche inside that person's head is very different. Their motivation is very different. The graft type, where they are in their journey, if it's non-op versus op, if there's been a meniscus
yeah,
repair, if there's been it's so complex, and each person, yes, it's an ACL most often, but it's a different story and a different journey, which is cool. It's cool to sort of see these little things along the way.
yeah,
And I think that's probably the whole overriding comment there is probably listen to your athlete, listen to the person in front of you, because like you said, you might have some people who just are probably mentally burned out by the sport and don't want to see a soccer ball or a basketball for the next 6 months. Maybe they've had a hellish couple of years and they've just been living and breathing their sport, and it's like this injury came at a time where it's like, well, here's my time to take a breath, and I just can't watch another game of basketball, and I just want to go and sit in the pool or something like that. So talking to your athletes is really key
yeah,
there. Then you got other people who just need to have something and to engage them back as early as possible. Like, someone came to me the other day and said, they're 6 weeks post-op ACL. Can I dribble a basketball? It's like, well, yeah, like you can walk. You're walking around fine without crutches. Your knee's tolerating you walking around 5,000 steps a day, 10,000 steps a day. You're pretty handy in the gym. Like, you got good quad return. Your knee's not a fusion. You can
yeah,
walk up and down a basketball court, dribbling a basketball, and it's not going to come at any high degree risk. You just actually
yep,
standing there taking some free throws in a really static way, or you passing the ball up against a wall, like that reconnects you to your sport. Like, we don't have to completely take away all your joy. Like,
yeah,
we're
exactly.
taking so much joy out of you at the moment by saying you can't run and jump and play your sport. Let's just try and find some reasons to bring back in some of your joy that makes you happy and makes you connected again. So I think there's
Yeah.
some really good tips there for clinicians and patients too.
I think it's a fun way to get creative too.
Mm.
And I think over the last, yeah, especially since I was at Red Bull, Red Bull really taught me to let my athletes guide me.
Yeah,
In I might set your first set, and then your job is to riff off of it. Like,
yeah,
how are you going
yeah,
to change it for the second set? Right? Okay,
yeah.
we're doing knee extensions. We're probably not going to riff off them, but we're not riffing off your
Yeah,
squat. But
that's it.
if we're working on neuromuscular control, or we're working on a reaction time or speed aspect, right? Like, I can set a foundation, and if you then make it more fun for
Yeah.
yourself, awesome.
Go
Perfect.
for it.
We're both going to have more fun
Yeah.
because we're
Oh,
both going to laugh. Like, certainly if I'm trying to throw something, something's going to go awry. Um,
unreal. Yeah, and I think of all, that's a really probably of all the environments you could probably possibly work in. Your Red Bull athletes are just synonymous with pushing the boundaries and really pushing their bodies to the extreme. And I think for physios, we probably live on the more conservative side of the equation, where we probably undercook a lot of things, whereas the Red Bull athletes and professional athletes in general will definitely push the red line, and that they'll tell us where their body can go to. I think to get that learning experience would have been amazing,
yeah.
to really put
But I
things in
think,
perspective.
like you mentioned, we sometimes have we like to be in control. We like to see our
Mm,
athletes succeed. It's hard to
mm,
watch them fail at
yeah,
things.
yeah,
But like even coming back into basketball now, the engagement that I get with somebody, if I'm saying, all right, this is your first set, you get to change your second set, even if we spend, 30 seconds with them going, I don't know, what do you want me to do?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
we
yeah.
eventually get to we eventually get to something,
Yeah,
and that something, now they're part of that something. Like, the engagement with that makes them part of the process,
yeah,
and even if we're not changing we're not really pushing it, we're doing with your eyes closed instead of with your eyes open,
yeah.
or you've got you got to bounce 2 basketballs instead of one. We're not really changing a ton when it comes to like the precautions or safety around it, but we've changed the dynamics to the point where, yeah, okay, now this is my rehab,
Yeah.
not I'm doing what Amy told me to do.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think
And there's
that,
that's so much engagement with that, and you're going to more likely have success with your compliance to exercise rehab, and that we know that that's becoming such an integral part of the overall 12-month, 2-year success of rehab is the fact they
yeah,
turn up and get the job done, and put quality work in, as opposed to probably having the best program. It could be boring as batshit, and it could be the best, but it's boring, and you got no engagement, and then you got no commitment or adherence. So it needs to be a two-way street there. So yeah,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
good teaching point. What do you think? Just recently, the conversations come around, and due to probably some work from the Aspartame group showing that 9-month return to sport figure in the sort of more, I guess, elite male athletic population is a bit debated and questionable, and it's more about, um, the second injury risk is not so much around the 9-month. It's more about making sure their strength measures, their performance measures are at a certain level, as opposed to chasing time. Where do you stand on that? And like, in terms of your return to play kind of standards, are you? Yeah, I'd love to hear your sort of thoughts and insights, and and also what are your kind of key sort of rocks, so to speak, when it comes to return to sport?
Yeah. No, I'm 100% like criteria based.
Mm.
I'm very hesitant at the beginning of rehabs to give people a timeline,
Yep.
particularly, and that can sometimes be hard. It comes with the education around like we talked about, every ACL is entirely different.
Yep.
How your body responds, how that graft comes together, how your knee responds, motivation wise, how you get through
Yep.
rehab, like, right, like
Yep.
psychologically how rehab goes. And so 9 months, I honestly think I've had athletes come back before 9 months. It still makes me super nervous. Even if you
Yep.
are passing all of your criteria, it makes me really, really nervous. But I
Yep.
would say on the majority, and maybe this is me being more conservative, or maybe this
Mm.
is just me being a stickler from a risk tolerance standpoint to these are the criteria we agreed on at the beginning of rehab. So
Yep.
these are the ones I'm going to hold you to now at the end of
Yep.
rehab. Um, you know, I don't have very many athletes that come back before a year, and I'm
Yep.
totally fine with that.
Yep.
Because I want anybody I work with to come back feeling like they are 100% where they should be. They're ready to go, and fully confident in their
Yep.
knee, fully confident in their sporting ability, and everybody, all of our stakeholders are in alignment that, yeah,
Yep.
we're ready to go.
Yep.
That from the start framework to how I build criteria, those are kind of my sticking points of like, we're going to have a working group, and this working group is going to be kind of the important people in your life, in your rehab,
Yep.
right? That team's going to meet on a regular basis, and I am super lucky to to work in a resource rich environment where
Yep.
we have a lot of disciplines and we have a lot of resources. Um, but my big rocks are always, strength is always part of it.
Yep.
And that's not just concentric, that's eccentric, isometric, and starting to be more RFD as well.
Yep. Yep.
Um, those may not be my concentric is always my hard and fast criteria. My
Yep.
eccentric and RFD are kind of ideal but not necessary because they can often be
They can
slower to come.
shift. Yep.
But if we're hitting concentric and we're way off eccentric, I'm going to be asking questions as to why we're seeing a big gap there and
Yep.
whether or not, how those are going to influence our decision. Um, as much as hop testing gets bashed quite a bit,
Yep. Mm.
I do still hop test.
Yeah.
Because I think even though it's not, for me, it's not a return to sport criteria, it's earlier. It's a return to training criteria for me. Sometimes actually even like kind of return into early training integration. Because if you can't do that, then you certainly can't do anything beyond that.
Yes, absolutely.
That's pretty easy.
Yep.
I use a movement assessment all throughout. So having some sort of kind of biomechanical assessment, whether
Yep.
that's 3D biomechanics, or something more like a LESS or the like NA postural orientation assessment. I like to have some sort of kind of, we'll call it movement assessment.
Yep.
Um, I mentioned cardiovascular. Cardiovascular, I think, gets overlooked quite a bit.
Yep. Yep.
And so that's kind of a hard and fast criteria. How that looks, though, changes quite a bit sport
Yep.
to sport. So whether
Yep.
that's something like a yo-yo IR or actually a
Yep.
full VO2 test,
Yep.
but then something like a change of direction test, like a 505,
Yep.
anticipated and unanticipated. Um, and then I've started to integrate some of kind of the more kind of neurocognitive slash functional tests.
Yep.
So
Yep.
Meredith Chatput has one, a side hop test that's done with the PowerPoint in front of the athlete.
Yep.
We've been playing around with that a little bit more. So that kind of again falls maybe less into the like hard and fast criteria,
Yep.
but into the ideal things I'd like to see for you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
we're playing around with some of those um, in some of our testing as well. But yeah,
Awesome.
big rocks come into strength, speed, power, cardiovascular capacity, strength capacity, and coordination kind of
Yeah.
big
Awesome.
bucket.
I like how, yeah, and I really like that there's kind of like your key, like big essential rock that's kind of non-negotiable, like that concentric quad strength. It's got such an evidence base behind it. It's been kind of in our known I guess outcome measures for many years, but now we're sort of starting to see, you know, RFD and neurocog, and I agree. I think they need to be of a good, a really high standard. But yeah, whether or not it holds someone back, it's one of the, yeah, it needs to sort of line up with their strength. And I like how, because I feel like there's some clinicians who are really hard and fast with, they have to be passing this mark, and if they fail on just one, then that athlete gets held back. Yet the athlete could probably go out and play. So I think it's just being aware of the whole battery of tests and being a bit flexible at the right time. With the
Yeah.
9 month mark, I think that's an interesting point too, because like, yes, and I'm like you. I probably don't have too many people coming back earlier than 12 months, and I celebrate that. If someone gets closer to, if they're passing their tests at 9 months or even a little bit before, it's like wonderful. Now you got more time to train and get conditioned for your sport, because there'd be nothing worse than coming back at 8 months, really rushing the process, 9 months on the dot kind of thing, and then just be off pace, like with the rest of your team
Mhm.
or the rest of your competition, because they've been playing all year round. You don't have that match fitness. Your skill development is going to be off the pace. There's just going to be so much, like you're not going to perform, like ultimately is, and there's nothing worse than, probably stepping onto a court and not being able to perform the way that you want to. So that's what, being able to be and hold in that training environment for a little bit longer to feel like you're at that level to perform again. I think that's a really powerful position and more motivating position. So yeah, and obviously athlete to athlete, that's going to change. Like you're going to have some
Yeah.
athletes who are in their 30s, last year of their playing career, really pushing hard. Their team makes the grand final series. They're 8 months out. Let them go. Let them cook. But then you
Yeah.
got someone who's 20, who's coming back from their second ACL injury, and they're pushing hard to get back at 9 months. It's like, you know what? Why don't we just spend a bit more time in the training environment and push this out and stretch this out a little bit longer? So I think,
Yeah.
once again, just listen and look at the athlete sitting right in front of you, and and make some sensible decisions there on that one.
It's hard. It's also being willing to have hard conversations too, though.
Yeah, yeah,
And this is actually, and this is, going back to my return to play.
mm,
Um, I didn't have these, I didn't have anybody that I had these hard conversations with.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't. I was at the point where I was playing European games, but I was gonna, the plan was then I kind of made my return to full pre-injury level back in the US at a
Yeah.
national tournament. Right. I came back and I played US nationals.
Yeah.
My build up to that, I'd gotten sick. I actually got hit on a bicycle and had a like deep MCL tear on my contralateral side. So my build up was like
Yeah.
really disrupted, really poor. And if I'd had that hard conversation, I shouldn't have played that
Mm.
US Nationals.
Yeah.
Like I really probably shouldn't have. And so I probably wouldn't have then partially torn my graft.
Yeah.
But like, right, like I'd put myself in a situation where I had a friend of mine who writes my strength and conditioning, she still does, writes my strength and conditioning program. She'd written all my programming.
Yeah.
I had another friend who was kind of doing manual therapy whenever I needed it, but I was kind of overseeing my rehab and
Yeah.
having that self conversation, right? We as physios are terrible at being our own, client.
Yep.
I needed a physio in that point to go,
Yep.
I know you really want to play this tournament, but this probably isn't the smartest thing. Like,
Yeah.
here's your data, here's where you are. This probably isn't the smartest thing. And so that's also right. I think we get used to sometimes having those hard conversations, but they are to
Yeah.
say, no, that this is the best decision for you right now.
Yeah. And it's the perfect reason why you don't treat your family or your friends or yourself.
Exactly.
Because we are not impartial.
Yep.
We and physios. And look, I'm a perfect example of do as I say, not as I do, because probably better this year. I'm actually training better, probably training the best I've ever trained. I've consistently gone to the gym, all those kind of things. But up until last year, for the best part of 20 years, I was constantly breaking down with calf tears, Achilles tendon pain, sore knees. I was wondering why, because I just didn't put the work in, of course. So, like we're the worst people sometimes to be treating ourselves or, yeah.
Yep.
So importantly, get some professional outside of your close inner circle advice moving
Mhm.
moving forward. Here to help in the future, Amy, if you ever need some other hard conversations, if you need.
If I
All
end up
right.
getting reconstructed, I'll let you know.
All right, all right. I'll be here. I'll make myself available. Last one. You've been wonderful, and we're probably taking up too much of your time on your honeymoon and your extended break. But one
All
final
good.
piece of advice, if you can offer anyone, and it doesn't have to be ACL specific, more so just advice for physios, young early career clinicians who may be listening to this. Any words of wisdom to help us be better physiotherapists to help our patients in general, not just ACLs?
That's a good question. I think I think it actually relates to what we were actually just talking about is right, like
Mm.
find your people, find your community,
Yep.
or find those people who you can have those hard conversations with and will actually give you honest feedback,
Yep.
but will also be there to lift you up, to support you, to hear you out when shit hits the fan.
Yep.
It's really nurture and build that community because it's so important to your longevity within the field, but also, staying motivated, finding opportunities that make you happy, and finding environments that really allow you to be a good allow you to be a good clinician and grow
Mm.
as a clinician, but also enjoy what you're doing and enjoy the people that you're working with.
Yep. Awesome. Great advice. I think that's beautiful advice, because I think a lot of time young career clinicians, early career clinicians, they probably, it's hard to get and often it's hard to accept feedback and get that, like, because you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof when you're in your first year. Some people are still kind of a bit meek and and really sort of, conservative. But I think, and it's hard then to take feedback from either perspective. Like when you think you're killing it, and someone says, "Hey, you're actually doing not that great. You need to sort of rein thing," and then also too, like if you are a little bit gentler and a bit soft, it's always hard to also get some feedback that can be
Yeah.
quite critical. But
Yeah.
I think that makes us, that definitely, allows us to be, a bit thicker in our skin, and ultimately it's going to help us get better. Like, because there's no, like, unless we get feedback, we won't know if we are doing a good job or not, but and we don't know if we need to change, or if we can change, or should we change. So I think it's important that we are open to feedback, both positive
Yeah.
and negative, and very constructive. And I think that's a really, really strong message there. And seek feedback too, like, don't, just rock up to your job every day and accept the status quo. I think it's important that you seek feedback where possible, and then have those, good friendship circles around you, and good family connections where you can, and enjoy
Yeah.
your job. That's really great. Love that. That's awesome. Well, Amy, you've been wonderful. Thanks for sharing your story, your ACL story, and your own personal experience, and also to sharing
Yeah.
all your wealth of knowledge with all the wonderful athletes that you work with. It's been a great learning experience for me tonight. So thank you very much.
Yeah. No, thanks again for having me.
Pleasure. All right, team. Thanks very much, ACL Hubbers. Stay tuned to the next episode. We probably, we probably don't. We do have another one coming out very soon, so stay tuned for that one. And until the next time, see you next time.